What is up, guys? Hydro7Slot back with another video, and in this video I'm going to be going over some of the recent changes that the build has gone through, some changes in the directions that I plan on going into as far as the future for this build goes, and just some of the good news, some of the bad news that are associated with the build. So yeah, so let's get it started. So starting off, I don't know if you guys can already tell, but I am no longer running the factory style wheels. The factory style wheels were some JK Sport wheels. They were pretty basic, I would say. The new wheel and tire setup I'm running now are actually off of a Gladiator Rubicon. As far as sizing goes, I'm not exactly sure what the exact size of these tires are. It says 285-70 R17, so 17 is obviously the size of the rim, but as far as tire size, I'd say it's safe to say these are 33s. The last set were quote-unquote 35s. I say quote-unquote 35s because most of the time when you're looking at tires that say their size in inch, they're not exactly all that accurate. Some people have sometimes shown they buy a set of 40s, and the 40s, when they measure them, end up being 39.5 inches. So that's why I say quote-unquote 35s. They said that there were 35s, but they were also hand-me-downs, I guess you could say. They were passed on to me by a friend, and those tires were also balding. That's one of the biggest reasons that I went ahead and changed out to this setup. So yeah, so I'm now running some Gladiator Rubicon wheels and tires. There's some takeoffs. I actually bought these from a company called AMW 4x4, and I got these for a good deal. It was worth it to buy these rather than just buying a set of tires and then having those tires mounted onto the older wheels. And these wheels were a lot nicer than the ones that I was running before. So yeah, so we're running these. I got these with 35 miles actually. Like they do in-house builds where they buy from, I guess, a dealership or whatever it may be. They custom order the builds that they work on, and these, they definitely did have 35 miles on them, because when I initially got them, they still had the yellow and I think it's like a navy blue stripes on the tread that just shows that the tires were like brand new. They also still had like the hairs that come in the center of the tread, but yeah, so that's one of the more noticeable changes. Another change that I've done to the channel and the whole YouTube overall is that from now on out, the channel is going to be called 7 Slot Motorsports, and the reason for that is because I just recently got my hands on a new build. It's a JL Rubicon. It's a 4-door, and this JL Rubicon, it is Bikini Pro Coat. That's the name of the paint that it has. It's a very, very nice color. I'll see if I can do a walk around of that build soon, but we're no longer Hydro7Slot because we have multiple builds to work on now. And yeah, so I would say I'm still gonna leave the rev kit under Hydro7Slot, and I'll probably even see if I can make a rev kit for the JL under Bikini 7 Slot. And if you guys haven't been able to catch on, the Hydro7Slot name came because the actual color on the car is called Hydro Blue, so I just named it Hydro 7 for the grill and then Slot. So yeah, so Hydro7Slot and Bikini 7 Slot are now part of 7 Slot Motorsports, which is a new Instagram and YouTube for the builds and everything. And yeah, so I also did a banner. I'm not sure if you guys could have noticed, but I did a banner, and the banner is kind of like a matte black. It's pretty minimal. You can only see it really at certain lights, when like the light's flashing it, as we can see it. But if we were saying like in a darker parking garage, you wouldn't really be able to notice it. Like from here, I don't really think you can tell. From right here, you can't really tell that the banner's there. But I was either between going with matte black or white, but I felt like if I did white, it would have been too tacky. I told a friend of mine that I was planning on doing a banner, and I was kind of like doing a bit of a preview of what it would look like, but with white, it looked like it would have been a little too tacky, it would have been too flashy. So I just went with matte black, and I'm very happy with how it looks. It's very minimal, and yeah, that's the new YouTube and Instagram for the build. So those are the two noticeable changes. Another third change that I've done on the exterior is that I went ahead and I changed out the door handles. The door handles are from a company called Rampage. These door handles, let me see if I can put a flashlight on. Sorry, it's not working. Let me see. There we go. Okay, so these door handles are from a company called Rampage. For those of you that already have a JK, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But with the JK factory door handles, for one, it was already getting sun faded, where it wasn't as black as it was when the car was just off the lot, for example. Like when the car was just came out the factory line, I'm sure it would have been just as black as this. But over time, being that it is plastic, just like the factory fenders, when they're black and not color matched, they tend to lose their sense of color. And yeah, so the ones I had were sun faded. These are metal, these can't get sun faded. And another nice thing about these is, compared to the stock ones have a bit of a cut right here. For those of you that have a JK, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And with the sound system that I have 2 subwoofers. They do shake up the car just a bit, and I would notice that the plastics on the door handles would vibrate. Now, being that this is all just one piece, this whole door handle in itself is 2 pieces total. It's the door handle, actual, I guess you can call handle, and then the button is its own separate piece, obviously. But besides that, I no longer have to worry about vibrating plastics or any of those annoying sounds that might come with like loose plastics on the doors when there's songs with high bass. So that's one of the upgrades. And yeah, I'd say those are pretty much the 2 biggest upgrades I've done with the exterior. So I changed out the wheels, changed out the door handles, and I also put a banner on the front windshield. Another small little upgrade I did was I got D-rings for the car, for the rear bumpers, because on the front bumpers, if anything, I could just always just switch them from the rear to the front. But these are some worn D-rings. These are kind of like the flat style. You can kind of see it there. And I'm definitely very happy with these D-rings and how they look. I got them for both sides. And if I ever need to do something with getting like winched or winching, I could always just do it with removing the rear D-rings and putting them on the front, because the front and how the D-rings mount is a little different. And I just didn't think I'd be too big of a fan of the D-rings like that there, so I only put them on the back. So if I ever have to, I could always just move them from the back to the front, or vice versa, however I may need it. And yeah, so I'd say those are really the biggest differences with the whole exterior. Change of wheels, now I'm running a banner, door handles, and the D-rings on the rear bumper. Now I have some good news, I have some bad news about the build, some changes in the route that I want to go with for the build. I'll see if I could show from smallest to biggest on interior changes. All of these recent upgrades that I've done are pretty much all cosmetic. They're not really performance, getting me closer to stage 2, where I mentioned the first video that I want to do axles and everything. But this is a step forward, just not in the direction I was kind of hoping to go into. But yeah, let me see if I could show from smallest to biggest the recent changes that the build has gone through. All right, and let's see. So I just recently changed out the interior trim piece from, these used to be silver, and I just bought a set of 4 from Amazon, and I had them wrapped in black by a shop. And yeah, so as you can see, it's a lot nicer than the older one. I'm not sure if the older one really showed too much in the first video, but with these, it's definitely a lot nicer because they're not scuffed up or beat up like the older ones used to be. And on top of that, I also got rid of the nets on the interior trim. The nets were sagging, and that's what JKs are mostly known for. And now that I got rid of the sagging nets and I blacked these out, I'm much happier with how the interior door panel looks. And yeah, clearly there's really nothing much more to be done here. I'm pretty content with how it looks. Another upgrade that I've done is I am no longer running the factory carpets on the interior of the car. I am now running some Armorlite flooring, and this Armorlite flooring, I really did need it. I still left the weather mats in case I get the floor dirty. I could always just pull the weather mats off and scrub those rather than having to scrub directly on the floor. Being that these are rubber, I could always just scrub this. Like, there's no problem with me scrubbing this, but I just left the mats for the simplicity of being able to pull out each mat in case something gets dirty. And it also protects the investment of changing out the floor. So it's a protecting investment, and the investment is still there. So in case it does rain, I still have that protection there. And yeah, so the biggest reason for which I changed out the flooring on the interior was because I was actually having an issue where the carpet that used to go inside the car from factory would absorb water whenever I would have water leaking from the roof down onto the floor. And if the car was outside during the day, the heat in the car combined with the water puddles that would form and get absorbed by the carpet would just leave a smell of mold within the car. It was really annoying, and I went ahead and just decided to address that issue by replacing the floors on the front 2 rows. So I'm running the Armorlite flooring on both the front row and the second row. Here we go. I am running the Armorlite flooring on both the front row and the second row. This is the carpet that I was talking about earlier, and this carpet would just absorb the water. I didn't really do the back area, and I'll explain why, but I didn't really need to address the back because the back doesn't experience too much of a leakage issue because there's no cracks in the ceiling for water to leak down from. And the front 2 rows would be the ones to experience the most exposure to water, because for example, if I'm running no doors, water can come in through the rain. And yeah, it's a straight drop right there. And yeah, so I could always just rinse it off, scrub it down, and then boom, just like that, it's all done, taken care of. Now I left the floor mats, like I said, because it does protect the investment that I made. And yeah, that's pretty much one of the upgrades that I've done to the interior. And besides that, I also, under the Armorlite flooring, did some insulation. The insulation that I did is from a company called Hothead Headliners, and the insulation is called the Sound Assassin. I did the Sound Assassin on the floor within the whole car. Sorry, just a minute. All right, there, sorry. So the Sound Assassin insulation, I did it inside the car. I did it for the whole car, because when I did the Armorlite flooring, I pretty much gutted the whole car inside. I pulled the seats off, I pulled the carpet off, I pulled all the wiring, I pulled it up, and then I went ahead and cleaned everything. I wiped everything down, and then I rolled on the insulation. I'll see if I can show you guys right now what that insulation looks like. Just one second. Sorry, I'm kind of fighting this because I'm doing it with one hand. There we go. There we go. So this is the insulation I pretty much rolled on the whole interior of the car. It's all around the floor, and I even did it on this little tub area for where the cargo goes. And yeah, so that's pretty much exactly what I was talking about. The reason I didn't do the Armorlite flooring on the rear cargo area was because the subwoofers from JL Audio come with a box that is made in carpet to match with the rear carpet. So I thought just to keep it matching, it's best to leave it like that. Plus I don't worry too much about water exposure going into the back, because honestly the back's never really open and I have no cracks or anything to worry about where water could leak in through. But yeah, carpet right there. And I also still did do the insulation right there. So the insulation, the benefits that it comes with is it helps with heat reduction from going into the car from the floor, and it also does help with sound insulation. So the sound insulation is good because I am running the Off-Road Pro from MagnaFlow, and that exhaust cuts off right in front of the rear axle. And with that Off-Road Pro, it is a pretty loud exhaust, and being that it's a loud exhaust, the sound insulation coming from both the insulation Sound Assassin that I laid down and the Armorlite helps out a lot to make dailying this car a little more manageable. So yeah, so the biggest benefits both those insulation and floor have is heat reduction and sound reduction within the cabin. And definitely very happy with how it came out. I also went ahead and replaced the seals on the front 2 freedom panels to help reduce the likelihood of having leaking from happening again. Ever since I did that replacement and I resealed the freedom panels on the front, it went ahead and helped out a lot. I have yet to see any water leaking from the ceiling going down onto the floor, and even if it did happen, the Armorlite's already there, and already addressed that issue. So that's, I'd say, the second biggest modification. I showed the first, which is the first would be the smallest, where I did the interior panel for the doors. Just a heads up guys, in case you guys are interested in the door handles, I mentioned it is from a company called Rampage, but I also want to say this isn't exactly a direct bolt-on. So in order to do the door handles, you have to open the door, remove the interior panel, you have to pull it off, and then you have to drill holes into the actual door panel to get this to go on. There's some plastics that go within the door. It's kind of like the whole mechanism to help the windows stay in place, and you have to drill holes through it as the window's up, obviously. But this isn't exactly a direct, simple do it all within 1 hour. I did all 4 front doors, and I also did the cargo area. I did the tailgate with this door handle as well. So I'm running this door handle on all 4 doors and the cargo tailgate. But yeah, so I also wanted to get that out the way. So I did the door handles, I did the interior trim pieces for the door panel, I replaced the floor, and now comes the biggest change that I've done with the build. Let's get it over with. I'm a little nervous on what you guys might think, but let's go ahead and show you guys. The reason I'm doing this video at night is because I am gonna show you guys a recent upgrade I've done with the lighting, and here it goes. This is the new interior for the Hydro 7-slot build. Sorry, there, just fixing the lighting. There we go. And yeah, so ideally I would have done this upgrade a lot later down the line. The only reason I didn't was because I came up across this deal on these seats, and it was too good for me to pass up on it. I don't know if you guys can tell from there, but these seats are black vinyl, and it has a carbon fiber vinyl to it. It might look like gray. I'm kind of seeing it looks like gray, but these are carbon fiber vinyl with the black vinyl as the base. And I'm definitely very happy with how it came out. I came across a good deal for these, and I didn't want to lose up on the deal, so I went ahead and bought them. And let me see, I can show you guys what the rear ones look like. For the rear, I did do the seat covers, and the reason I didn't do 4 seats to match like the fronts was because then I would have lost area within the center right here. And also I have the advantage that since I only just covered these, I could always just fold these down and I have an extended cargo area. And yeah, there was a lot of work to get these to work out well. The easiest thing about this whole install was really generally just installing the rear covers. But as far as the fronts go, I had to do some adaptations because for the fronts, I wanted to use the factory seat belts. I'll address that later, but if I didn't do what I did, I would have had to run a bracket that goes from here to here for me to be able to run the buckle and then be able to run the seat belt. So I saw a channel where they kind of showed how to run factory seat belts with PRP seats, but the seat belt would have actually ended up right here deep in this gap, and then I would have had to like fight the buckle every time I put it on. But I kind of just did some research, found some seatbelt buckle mounts, and with the universal seatbelt mounts, this kind of almost even looks factory. It looks like it could have been like a Jeep performance package if they ever even offered one, but I'm definitely very happy with how it came out. You can see the brackets that I put on here, and with these brackets I was able to run the seat belts and the buckles. And this bracket, it adds some spacing between the PRP bracket and the sliders, so I went ahead and just put washers in the front to match the front and the rear with how spaced out it would come out. If you guys would like, I'll do a video on this and how to do it so it comes out as nice as possible. There's just a little bit of modifying I would do, and that would be to the front for the driver's seat, but it wasn't a mistake on my end. It's just how the seat belts come from factory, I guess. But there's one little minor thing I have to address for the front driver's seat for that seatbelt buckle right there. It is at a nice spot, but just the way that it was built, they built it different compared to the passenger. The passenger is perfect. but this one is a little more stiff. So it doesn't really give too much, but that position works perfectly fine when I'm sitting in the car. I could always just close it and it clicks perfectly fine, and it works for the time being. So yeah, so that is the recent upgrade that I've done with the interior. I'd say another small little upgrade that I did was, I don't know if you guys recall, but in the first video that I did, I had a dash cam, and the dash cam was like a run-off-the-mill regular dash cam. It's a VOFO, and the dash cam that I had was a block that was right here. But as you can see, I'm no longer running that. I really do want to prioritize making this build as clean as possible. So as you guys can see, I'm no longer running that dash cam because I upgraded to a wolf box. Let me see if it turns on. There we go. And not sure if it'll calibrate to the brightness of the wolf box, but it records back, records front, and you could do split. I normally tend to just drive with it off, so it's just like a regular rear view mirror. It's almost as if it wasn't even there. And what's really nice about it is that it helps clear up the whole windshield. Like, there's not really too much clutter going on the windshield, and it's a lot cleaner to look at. And yeah, that's pretty much what the new windshield setup looks like. You can still kind of see the letters from the banner, but that doesn't really bother me too much. It's up and out of the way. And the new wolf box, it's almost as if it wasn't even there. But records 24/7. It's very clean, very nice. And yeah, so that's pretty much the new interior. PRP seats. It's a little darker, but let me see if I can get the flashlight. It's a better show, but there we go. PRP seats on the front, the Enduros, and for the rear, seat covers to match the front. I also did get from Amazon some seat covers for the front two seats that actually fits it perfectly, and it covers the whole seat. And the nice thing about that is that I could use them for when I go to the beach. I could use them for when I go to the gym, so that way I don't really mess up or dirty the interior of the car. And that way I don't have to worry about cleaning the seats. Like, I just throw the seat covers on, I go ahead and I use them whether I came from the gym or came from the beach. I could pull the seat covers off, throw them in the laundry, and I never have to really wash the seats. I do know that some people with half doors, buggies and everything run PRP seats, and those PRP seats get trashed. And I say trashed as in they go through a lot of the elements like rocks, mud, rain, sun, and they do perfectly fine. I don't mean trash as in they go to garbage, but they get pretty abused, and the seats are perfectly fine. So I do know that the seats can hold up to it, but being that it was a big investment, I just went ahead and decided to protect the investment. Almost like the same thing with the floors, where I still left the weather mats even though I replaced the whole floor. But yeah, those are pretty much the biggest changes that I've done on the build so far. And I also have some news as to some of the changes that are going to come to the build, and some things that I've decided that I want to steer away from, some things I want to steer towards, and some good news, some bad news on the build. So this is kind of like the harder part to talk about, because this is where things get a little bad. And I mean, there is some good to it. I'm trying to be hopeful about it. Gonna be honest, it doesn't really matter where this build goes, I'm still gonna keep this build. I ran into a lot of inconveniences with this build as far as performance goes. So I'm having some issues that hopefully don't snowball into bigger issues, but I could only assume that they sooner or later might. So the first thing that I want to mention is that around, I'd say a month and a half ago, I was having an issue where my rear axle was leaking gear oil, or like, yeah, gear oil onto the floor, because the rear drive shaft where it hooks into the actual rear axle, it was damaging the internals within the axle. It was damaging, I don't know if it's the ring and pinion, it's pretty technical, I don't know exactly the words to describe the issue, but if you would go under the car and you would grab onto the rear drive shaft where it hooks into the rear axle, it had some movement to it. It wasn't exactly stiff how you would assume, and when you grabbed it, you could like kind of like jerk it up and down, and then if you jerked it up and down, you can see that it had like some play to it, and that was kind of like a telltale sign that the rear axle internals were getting damaged. They were kind of like falling apart, they were breaking up, and yeah, so I went ahead and had to replace the rear axle. If it was up to me, I would have done tons, but the thing is it's kind of easier said than done. For those of you that don't know, I'm still a college student, I'm still going to school, and I'm also working at the same time. The job that I have is on weekends. It's not exactly like a full-time job, so being that it is a weekend job and I'm still in school, I don't exactly have the financial position I would want to take on the whole challenge of doing axles, doing suspension, and doing all of that. So if I would have done axles, on axles alone, I'm looking at 20,000. So I already know the axles that I want to run. I want to run some Fusion 4x4 axles. I want to run the front Kingpin 60 and the rear 14 bolt. Now, with axles, it's all so interconnected that it's not as easy as bolt on, bolt off. Like, it's not that easy. If I do get the axles, the axle company does offer to weld on the brackets for you to run on coilovers like I plan to, but then that would also mean I then have to also purchase coilovers. I do have some changes I've decided to go through when it comes to coilovers. I kind of changed routes on the way that I want to go with the suspension, but in coilovers, approximately I'm looking at 8,000. So we're talking 20,000 in axles, 8,000 on coilover suspension setup. I'm still missing the steering kit, the PSC Hydro Assist. PSC Hydro Assist kit's gonna run me like 3,500. So we're talking 31,000 and some change, 32, we'll say, we'll just round it up, 32,000 in parts. And even then, I'm still having to pay for labor to get this professionally installed. So yeah, so I just was kind of obligated. I was in a tough spot, and I was obligated to just go ahead and replace stock for stock. So I'm actually running a stock style rear axle. This is the rear axle that would come in a JK, and there's really no upgrade here. I generally spent all the money I had left on replacing this rear axle, and just the other day, the day after I installed the rear axle, I went to go to the grocery store, and when I went to drive into a parking spot just like this, it was a bit of a tight parking spot, so I had to stop, put the car in reverse, and when I put the car in reverse, it started revving up as if it was in neutral. It was a bit concerning, but I was thinking that maybe it was just like a silly little slip that the transmission had. I was hoping it was a silly little slip, but it was not. It did it again the next day, and then I went ahead and I got it checked out with a transmission shop, and they verified what I presumed, where my transmission is going out. Now, the transmission rebuild is gonna run me approximately 3,500 bucks. I feel the same way I feel about the transmission like I did about the axles. If it was up to me, I just go ahead and upgrade the whole thing, the whole drivetrain. I'd go ahead and do the motor swap and the axle swap, do the motor swap and the transmission swap for like an LS 6.2 with a 6L90E transmission. And I just recently started learning about these, but I knew I was gonna have to get it at some point with an Atlas transfer case and this and that. And yeah, that's also an expensive undertaking. And there's a lot of details to that. I'll talk about those details later on in the next video. Just go over like the plans for the motor swap and what I want to do and everything. But just to keep it short, I want to do a 6.2 LS3 with a 6L90 transmission and an Atlas transfer case. And then I also have to look into which company I use to do the swap. I have to look into which shop I'm gonna get to install this whole kit. It's a lot of money. So just to run some numbers very quickly, I was looking at the swap kit. So for the swap kit from RPM Extreme, which seemed to be my better option, I'll see if I can do a video later on the options for doing a motor swap on a JK. But just to keep it short, so between the swap kit, an Atlas transfer case, and I like some brackets for the engine bay, so the engine bay could be as clean as possible, because one thing I want to prioritize with this swap is I want to make it so that later down the line in the future, if I do have to do some maintenance to the engine, everything is easily accessible. Right now, as is, you can see it in my second video where I showed my drivetrain upgrades for the radiator, the cold air intake. the JK36 engine bay from factory is pretty tight. Like, it's pretty clustered up. There's pretty much just everything just about everywhere. And simple services, like I had to replace at one point the oil filter housing because it cracked. I had to replace that, and when I replaced that, it took more than, like, I think 2 hours. And it was just annoying to have to move so many parts out of the way that had nothing to do with the part that I'm addressing. So just to run the numbers, swap kit, Atlas transfer case, and some brackets to clean up the engine bay, I'm looking at 13K. Besides that 13K, I'm looking at, I'd say 11K on a crate motor. If I do decide to go with a crate motor, an LS3, say 430 horsepower crate, I could go 430, I could go 495, I could go 525. It's all approximately around the same pricing. The only thing that changes between all those three configurations is the camshaft that it comes with. But I'm probably gonna go with a 430 and then personally modify the engine to get it to push around 500 to 550 horsepower. But then the thing is I would have rather done axles prior to the motor because it makes the most sense to me. God forbid I do the motor swap, I do everything, I'm running 550 horsepower to these stock axles. I give it too much gas, I'm snapping axle shafts left and right, guaranteed. And yeah, so that's kind of like the hard obstacle I'm in. I'm in a hard place right now. But like I said, swap kit 13K, crate 11K, transmission probably around like 4K, probably 5. So 11 and 5, we're talking 16 for the motor and transmission, 16 for the motor and transmission, and then 13, we're at 29K on parts. Let's say 30K because we haven't included shipping. 30K in parts, and I still have yet to pay for the labor to have this all installed. Yeah, so that's the hard spot I'm in. It's either a transmission rebuild for 3,500 or pull the trigger on drivetrain swap and spend a little over, I'd say easily 35K. So yeah, so that's kind of like the hard spot I'm in, where my transmission is slipping and it's hopefully not going to snowball into a bigger issue that leads to messing up the motor. But in all actuality, I can see how that is a possibility, because for example, when I'm on the highway, before I had experienced these transmission issues, I could do highway speeds at around 2,200 RPM. Now the same highway speeds, I do them at 3,000, maybe 3,400 RPM. According to the shop that diagnosed my transmission, I'm having a problem where I'm getting an error code for gear 1 and 2. My first gear and my second gear are throwing up error codes, and that mainly has to do with the torque converter, to my understanding. Transmissions are pretty complicated. I'm not going to pretend like I'm a specialist or know exactly what the issue is, but what I do know is that my transmission is slipping and it has to get fixed sooner or later. Now I do have the option where I could just ride it till it blows and then just all Hail Mary and install the 6.2 and the 690 and the Atlas and everything. But like I said earlier, I'm looking at more than 35K in parts and labor. So it's a lot easier said than done. Like I said, I'm still in school. My jobs are really only on the weekends, so I don't really make too much to get by with upgrading these parts and everything. I know I did the whole interior, but I only did it and I only pulled the trigger on it because it made the most sense in the moment, because it was a good deal. I was gonna do that regardless, and I didn't really see the whole transmission issue coming. Like, it hit me out of nowhere. The moment I fixed the rear axle issue, the transmission started slipping. And yeah, it is what it is. We work with what we got. And in all honesty, I am still gonna keep the build. If you go to any other mechanic and you tell them, hey, my car is having a slipping transmission, they'll probably tell you to start looking for another car. But at this point, me and this car, we're married. Like, till death do us apart. Like, I am not gonna give up on this car, and especially with how much effort I put into it. When I look at this car, I look at the build that I've always wanted to make. This is, for those of you who don't know, this is, I'd say, my third Jeep. My first one was Hydro Blue. My second one, I got it in a hurry. It was a granite gray, granite gray JL, but it was a sport. It was a sport that came with the roll-up windows and everything, and it was a 4-door. And I wasn't a fan of the color, so I wanted to go ahead and get back into another Hydro Blue build. The first Hydro Blue JK that I had was a first generation JK with a little more of an outdated interior. and I wanted to get this one with the 3.6 because the first one was a 3.8, and I finally got this Hydro Blue JK. So to me, this is exactly what I was looking to build when I was planning on upgrading from my first build, and I'm definitely gonna go bigger with this build. I didn't really take too many videos or pictures of the first build, but the first build that I had 37s. I bought it from a company that already had it on 37s. It was like a little on the corner, like little car dealership. It was on 37s. It had the 3.8 and it had a soft top, and it was, I say Hydro Blue, but I think back then the first blue that they came out with that looked like this one was called, I think it was called Surf Blue or Ocean Blue. It was one of those two colors, but this is the closest to that color, and this has the next year motor, even though at this point it doesn't matter what motor it has if I'm swapping it out, but it is what it is. But yeah, so I've kind of been looking for this car for so long, and I finally got it, that I'm not going to give up on it. I've invested a lot into the parts that I've put into it, and I've invested a lot of time and effort into the car to just give up on it because the transmission wants to slip. So be it. I'll go ahead and throw in a 6.2 and a 6090 the day that the transmission just decides to blow up. But realistically, as far as it's looking, I will more than likely just go ahead and have the transmission rebuilt. It is gonna suck because it's gonna be, I'd say, $4,000 in parts that are eventually gonna come out and just be put to the side. I don't know if I throw up the transmission on, say, Facebook Marketplace, if I have a guarantee that somebody will be interested in my 3.6 and nag 1 transmission, but so be it. It is what it is. Hopefully when I do sell the motor and the transmission, I at least get what the transmission rebuild cost me and whatever the upgrades on the motor I did cost me, and hopefully if I get that money, I'll be okay. But that's pretty much how things are looking now. As far as the changes on the preferences and the routes that I want to go with the build go, these are the changes that I want to do. So in the first video, I mentioned that I want to run 2.0 King coilovers from a company called AccuTune. I'm no longer going to go with that route, and the reason is because I was just kind of looking on YouTube at all the different builds and all the different types of suspensions that they run, and most of them tend to run 2.5 coilovers. I got the 2.0 coilovers, just kind of jumping in head first into coilovers without really understanding what I was buying, and I decided that if I'm going to go ahead and pay a shop to install coilovers, they're going to charge me whatever they're going to charge me regardless of the size of the coilover. So if I'm going to pay that much for an install, it might as well be to install the better option. So I'm going to go instead with 2.5 King coilovers with remote reservoirs. Initially I was going to do 2.0 King coilovers, and the 2.0 King coilovers had no reservoir adjusters. It didn't come with clickers, I guess is the proper word for it, but now I'm going to go with 2.5s, so it's bigger in diameter, and I'm probably going to go with a bit of a taller coilover setup because instead of doing 40s like I mentioned in the first video, I am now planning on doing 42s. Between the time I did the first video till now, Mickey Thompson has announced that they're going to come out with 42s, and they've actually been in the market for quite a while now. It's been in the market easily for around 6 to 10 months, and it just makes the most sense to just run 42s because the price difference between a Mickey Thompson 40 to a 42, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's actually just around 150 bucks. So if you're telling me that for 150, all in all 600 bucks, the difference between me getting 40s and 42s, I might as well at that point I might as well spend the extra 600 bucks and get the 42s. So that's pretty much where I'm at right now. So instead of 40s, I'm going to be running 42s. Instead of 2.0 Kings, I'm going to be running 2.5s. And as far as mounting the coilovers, for the front, I always did feel like I wanted to do Genrite, but I just already had the AccuTune kit. It already came with the mounts, so it was kind of a difficult situation to be in. I sold the AccuTune kit. I lost money on it, but at the same time, I'm looking at the bright side of it. At least I'm installing something that I know I'm always going to keep on there. Like, there genuinely is no more that I would want. I could go 3.0s, but for the use of the build, it just seems a little overkill. I'm not exactly going to be rock crawling this every other weekend. I mentioned in the first video, this is going to go rock crawling like 6 times a year, and that is true. So I think 2.5s are the sweet golden spot, where if I go any more, it'd just be overkill, and if I go any less, I'd just be losing out on potential. So like I said, 42s, 2.5 King coilovers. As far as mounting them, so now that I sold the kit, I can kind of reimagine how I want to mount the coilovers. The front coilovers are going to be mounted with Generite coilover towers, and for the rear I was kind of in a tough spot. So as you guys know, I'm running some subs, and the subs go inside of the rear where the wheel well goes. So right inside of here there's a sub. I'm just gonna show you guys. So like in the video earlier, this sub is here, so it makes it hard to just cut into the tub and mount the coilovers there. But I went ahead and decided that I have to see if I can get the most out of coilover geometry, because if I would have installed it how AccuTune installs their coilovers, I would have ended up installing them in the same factory position, just like the factory shock. But then again, I could also bang up the coilover on a rock if I get hung up, and even then it also kind of makes you lose out on possible travel that you could get from mounting the coilovers outboarded, kind of vertical up into the axle. Now for the longest I was kind of in a tough situation where the only companies that offer rear coilover towers require you to cut into the tub. Generite requires you to cut into the tub. Crash Fab requires you to cut into the tub. I think Motobuilt sells towers as well, I'm pretty sure they do, requires you to cut into the tub. Every company required you to cut into the tub. Just this last GP when I was in Daytona, I saw that Rockcrawler had a build with rear coilovers. Before that event, I didn't see Rockcrawler running coilovers on the rear of any of their builds, or at least on any of their kits. And when I went up to the build and I talked to the owner, I was noticing that in the rear he didn't cut up the tub or anything. It didn't look like it, at least. And he told me that they're actually working on towers that don't require you to cut into the rear tub. This is a very good thing to see, because I was kind of in a tough spot where I didn't want to have to cut into the tub and remove and reposition the subs, because besides where the subs are now, the only other place I could put them would be in the cargo area right in the dead center. But that kind of would have just taken up space in case I wanted to put a cooler there. Like, it takes from the functionality of having the subs off to the side. It takes away from that advantage. But thankfully now I do know that Rockcrawler is making a setup that mounts the towers on the chassis. I believe the proper word for it is it Frenches into the frame. And when it Frenches into the frame, it would mount practically right here, and it would come at an angle, so then that way you don't have to cut into the tub. So I will be doing a Rockcrawler rear coilover tower, and I will be doing a front Generite coilover tower as well. I'll probably change out the front inner fender from an Evo one. I did Evo just because it was like the only aluminum one I found at the moment, but I'll probably change the front Evo inner fender to a Generite one to make it make sense. But we're pretty much going to be doing a front King 2.5 coilover tower, a rear Rockcrawler 2.5 coilover tower. The front coilovers are probably going to be 12s. The rears are probably going to be 14. I'm thinking that I'm going to try to see if I can possibly stretch the rear axle back 1 inch and the front axle forward 2 inches. I think that's how Generite suspensions tend to go for like the best suspension geometry and quality of ride. I think they stretch the front 2 and the rear 1. I'm going to see if I can do that with the long arms that I already do have. I'm not sure if they have enough area for me to work with in order for me to be able to stretch the front and the back. But that's pretty much what things are looking like as far as suspension goes, and then all that. And axles, like I said, I want to do 14 bolt rear and a Kingpin 60 on the front. And yeah, so I kind of more or less priced out what that whole suspension is going to cost me, like coilovers and towers and track bar mounts and everything from Generite and everything. And I'm looking at 8K. Like I said, for axles, I'm looking at 20K. I can order them with the mounts already mounted on for the coilovers, but I still have to have a shop professionally weld and French in the Generite and the Rockcrawler towers onto the build, and that has to get professionally done. Professional work ain't cheap, and I get it. I understand it. There's a lot of skill there, and the skill deserves its appreciation when it comes to the money. So yeah, so axles 20, suspension 8, front steering kit I'm looking at 3.5. So between that 3.5, I'm looking at 11.5, and then yeah, I'm looking at 32K in parts. 32K in parts. I didn't mention this earlier, but I went ahead and I already got the front and rear sway bars. The front and rear sway bars are going to be from Rock. To my understanding, if you want to get the best travel out of the suspension without having to get on and off the car to disconnect sway bars, anti-rock is the best way to go, and that's exactly what I did. So I went ahead and I bought front and rear anti-rock sway bars, and I already have the front and rear KMC wheels. They're 17s, 8x6.5 lug pattern, so they can work with the tons. And yeah, that's pretty much how the build is looking so far. As far as the interior goes that I was showing earlier, the only thing it's genuinely missing is a roll cage, harnesses, and possibly just fine-tuning the sound system. Like for example, when I do the roll cage, I want to mount the rear boat speakers directly onto the roll cage, just to kind of like clear up the space and everything. But it's all little silly details, and that's the least of my worries now, especially with a slipping transmission. So yeah, that's pretty much how the build is looking so far. That's just an update as to the route that I'm going into with the build. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys have a great day, and take care. 7 Slot Motorsports out. Bye.